What's up, guys? Energy physiotherapy. Been talking a lot last couple weeks about icing injuries and what the conversation is around that. And the conversation is always about inflammation, swelling, and pain. And go back to the blog, watch part 1 of the icing injuries, watch part 2 of icing injuries, and it explains a lot about why we're shifting away from icing and NSAIDs for pain management towards some more active recovery. But the other thing I come in contact with is this idea that pain equals inflammation, and that's not true. And so I think this is how we get caught up in this long-term icing and NSAID use, because people think, oh, when I have pain, that means it's inflamed, and therefore I should control that to reduce my pain. But we can take a simple look at an itis, we'll just say tendinitis and tendinosis, and this can really highlight for us that inflammation and pain are not the same thing. An itis is an acute condition, so some type of injury just happened. This is acute, and the acute phase is within 48 hours. Also within a tendinitis, this acute phase is what we call subacute, which is 2 days to 2 weeks. And this is where the healing process is occurring and this injury is actively resolving. Okay, when we get outside of 2 weeks, now we're looking at tendinosis. And this is considered a chronic problem. All right, in this acute phase, an itis is marked by pain, swelling, and inflammation. Okay, when you look at this under a microscope, all these things are present, and this is going to include a host of chemical soup that is creating this process. When we look at a tendinosis, this chronic condition, so we're outside of 2 weeks, it's still marked by pain, it's still marked by swelling, but inflammation is absent. And so this makes the point, hey, past 2 weeks, we've still got pain, we've still got swelling, but there's no inflammation. So there's really no reason to ice or use a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, because the reason we use those doesn't even exist in this chronic condition. It only exists inside this 2 week period. And so then the question I get was, well, I have chronic inflammation, and people think this because they associate pain with inflammation. And while that's true inside of 2 weeks, once we get outside that 2 week mark, we're a chronic situation. We may still have pain, we may still have swelling, but inflammation is absent. And so what about chronic inflammation? Chronic inflammation only exists in one category of problems, and that is autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease is characterized by chronic inflammation because the body is consistently fighting something within itself that it shouldn't be. Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, multiple sclerosis, those are examples of autoimmune diseases that are all marked by chronic inflammation. But if you do not have a known autoimmune disease, then you do not have chronic inflammation. If you have what you would consider chronic inflammation, where you have pain that has existed outside of this 2 week period, you have pain that is still existing once you've entered this Osis period outside of 2 weeks, what you have is injury and pain mismanagement. Simply put, you had some type of injury, you developed some type of pain, and you didn't do it right. All right? Tendinitis, for example, the tendon doesn't just get inflamed all of a sudden. There was something that led to that event, probably over the course of time. Most likely we can trace that back to a way you are moving with some small inefficiency or large inefficiency that has led to this acute process. you had this acute process and covered it up with ice and medications, but you didn't address the movement competency problem, which puts you over into this Osis phase, which now is chronic pain and chronic swelling, but you're inflammation free. And now you may still be covering up with ice and anti-inflammatories for pain, but we're not actually controlling any inflammation because it's not there. And so the idea that we have chronic inflammation only exists because people associate pain with inflammation. But we know that pain and swelling can exist without inflammation because that's what marks our tendinosis category. So let's break out of this mindset that pain and inflammation are the same, because they're not. We need to move away from these passive pain modalities and start moving into an active way to recover, to facilitate what the body is already trying to do. The body wants to increase blood flow, increase inflammation. Ice wants to decrease blood flow, decrease inflammation. It also makes your muscles still, which means they can't pump away fluid as effectively. And so we got to move away from this passive stuff and start thinking about how can we help our body increase blood flow in a pain-free way, evacuate waste in a pain-free way, and help repair and remodel our tissues so they become normal without interjecting all of this other stuff around that limits the process. All right, so are we trying to reduce pain and swelling with something that doesn't actually do it and slowing our healing processes down? Or are we facilitating our body's natural process with some active pain-free movements that really help increase blood flow, decrease pain, improve how the tissue heals? And then we need to break out of this idea that we have chronic inflammation, because unless you have an autoimmune disease, that's not true. All right? Check out the other videos on the blog about icing and why we're moving away from that, and part 2 talking about how we manage this stuff without ice and without NSAIDs, because we can't just take something away that we've always been doing. We got to remove that and replace it with something else that's a better option. So think about this stuff. What is pain? What stage are you in? How can we manage that appropriately? Maybe move from an Osis back to an Itis, back to a normal healthy tissue. See you next time.